Good morning. It's 9:40, so we like prompt starts. Good to see you all. My name is Ann Salyers, and for those, well, I know most people in the room, but not everyone. I've been a member of Hope Church since 2011, and currently serve as a deacon and chair of community ministry. And it's my honor to introduce our speakers this morning. And we are so lucky in this community to have Lakeshore Habitat for Humanity and Jubilee Ministries helping address the housing shortage with affordable and attainable homes for people to own, not to rent, but to own. That makes a huge difference. And together, these two organizations are building community by building neighborhoods. And recently, their collaborative work was recognized by the Michigan West Coast Chamber of Commerce with the 2024 Impact Award. And Ottawa County recently allocated $1.5 million to continue their work. So with us today to talk about the what, why, and who of their joint initiatives is Dave Rozman. He's Executive Director with Lakeshore Habitat for Humanity, and Steve Grose, who is the Executive Director of Jubilee Ministries. And both have some tidbits that they have in common, so I thought I'd share those with you. They both have degrees from Grand Valley State University. So Dave majored in criminal justice, and Steve graduated from Hope College, but went on to get his MBA from Grand Valley in business, and spent the initial part of his career in the automotive industry. So, but both felt compelled to serve the community in the nonprofit world. And so they left their industries and have been involved with volunteer work and nonprofits. So Steve served as on the Holland school board for 14 years, so a long time. And he's been with Jubilee Ministries for 15 years. And Dave has been nonprofit work for 20-some years. He joined Lakeshore Habitat in 2018 as their development director, and then last fall was succeeded Don Wilkinson as executive director. So another thing they have in common is they've both called Holland home for over 20 years, and both have 3 children. So let's learn about what this dynamic duo is up to, and I'm happy to introduce Steve and Dave.
Thank you. Thanks, Ann. So this is the first time Dave and I are doing a presentation together. Don and I have done them for years, and so we're going to see how it goes, right? See if we can work together. But we're going to bounce back and forth, because what we do is unique in our organization's mission, but it's also tied together so closely. And so the way we present is we're kind of feeding off each other as we talk about what we're going to do. So
sounds good. Yeah, we just want to first start by saying thank you. Hope Church has been a supporter of both Lakeshore Habitat and Jubilee Ministries for many, many years. Not only financially, but through volunteering, advocating, and supporting us. And in fact, we actually have 2 employees for Lakeshore Habitat call Hope Church home, and many others that have supported us over the years, like Ann, who served on our board. So we just want to say thank you first and foremost for that. One thing that we have in common as organizations, I think so often, and I've worked in nonprofit space around the country, so often you go into communities and nonprofits are almost competing against each other. And one of the blessings we have here in Holland is, for the most part, nonprofits are working together. And Jubilee and Lakeshore Habitat, we'll get into a little of the history later on, but there's a lot of alignment in what we do, and it's not competitive because we serve the same purpose, but for a little bit different population in our community. But the big key is we're about building strong communities through affordable housing. And when we say communities, we can break that down to a couple things. One, Holland as a whole, as a community. But then also as we're moving into building neighborhoods, we're about building strong neighborhood communities that families can thrive in.
So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the challenges of housing that the community is facing right now. Some solutions that we've come up with that we think are pretty unique around the state and as we've done some research around the country. And how the community can impact the work we're doing. So we'll jump right into understanding the housing crisis. And this is something that has so many tentacles. We're going to talk specifically about the work that we do, and it's related, but it's different. We don't directly deal with homelessness, but there's a ripple effect from the work we do that affects people that are dealing with homelessness. So, starting out, our housing issue right now in Ottawa County comes flat out to being a supply and demand issue. Simple economics. There's not nearly enough housing for the amount of people that want it. We're one of the fastest growing counties in the state. We have really strong business and industry that continue to grow. One of the things that's interesting as we talk to the business community, some of their growth is being throttled back a little bit right now because of lack of housing. They would be growing more, but they have found that the employees that they're hiring can't find places to live, and so they're not growing as fast as they really want to. I know of one company that was planning on closing a plant overseas and bringing the work here, and they just couldn't make that work right now just because of the shortage that they have. The other thing that happened, if you think back to 2009 and the economy back then, we had a lot of builders shutting down, not building anything, a lot of builders going out of business, and those that remained, the few that remained, they kind of moved to higher end homes because, quite frankly, those folks could afford it and they made a bigger profit. Don't blame them, they weren't making any money with starter homes. But we went a full decade. We went and met with the Ottawa County Administrator a few years ago, and he told us between 2009 and 2019, there wasn't a single home built in Ottawa County for less than $250,000, other than Jubilee and Habitat. We were the only ones, and we were just doing one or two at a time back then. So you have the fastest growing county in the state, you have no construction of starter homes. That's a recipe for a big issue. We've also had a significant increase in construction costs. We can't, to give you an example, if we're doing a greenfield site, so we have a plot of land, we need to put in roads and utilities and things like that. We've got to spend $50,000 per lot before we even start building a home. And so when you think about it, okay, what's a starter home cost? You've already got $50,000 tied up in the dirt. It's a math problem that's difficult to solve. So what's that mean? There's 12,000 people living in Ottawa, or 12,000 families living in Ottawa County right now that are house, and these folks are owners, but they're burdened by the cost of their home. And that means they're spending over 30% of their income on housing. Cost of the home, insurance, if they have HOA fees, and taxes. So they're spending over 30% of their income on housing. When folks start doing that, they start giving up things that like healthy eating and medical care and things like that. So our goal as we sell someone a home, they're spending 30% or less of their income on housing. So there was a housing needs assessment done 2 years ago in Ottawa County, and it came up with the figure of that we're short in the affordable homes, and that's homes basically from $149,000 to $250,000. That we're short 5117. I don't know if I buy that number, because that's huge. There's no way we're going to get that. But my thought is, even if they're half right, we've got a big problem in Ottawa County. And we keep talking about Ottawa County, but we're building in Allegan County right now. When we say that, we really focus on the greater Holland, Zeeland area. Habitat is moving down further south on some other projects. But Ottawa County has done some pretty good research on understanding what the housing problem is, and so that's why we quote their numbers quite often. So just a couple numbers that'll put things in perspective. We've seen household incomes since 2009 go up by about 12%. And in most cases, we'd be high-fiving, that's not bad. But the cost of housing in our community has gone up by 85% during that same time. And so again, we're talking whether buying or renting, it's just creating a burden on folks that they're spending way too much of their income in order to have housing. And to also, we're creating some perspective here. When I graduated from Hope and started my first job and got married, I'm the person we're talking about right now. I had a job at Prince Corporation and my wife was a teacher. And we went out for our first house. We got pre-approved for a loan. Okay, where do we want to live? Okay, let's live on the south side of Holland. There's 20 houses we can look at. Right now, me in today's world is making about $100,000 if we had 2 kids. So that's the area median income for a family of 4, right at 100% of the area median income. That means I could afford a $250,000 house. So if you go on Zillow, and I do this about every couple weeks, because one time a donor challenged me on it a little bit, and you draw a line from Port Sheldon to the east side of Zeeland to the north side of Saugatuck, and then you click, I want to see all the homes for $250,000 or less. The max I've ever seen is 10 homes. This week there was 6. 4 of them needed a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And so in that population center where there's a little over 100,000 people living, there's 6 homes available for folks in what we would call the middle income range to buy. And so that's what's creating the crisis that we're talking about.
So Steve talked a little bit about the ripple effects of the housing crisis and where we're at and how we got there. And again, like Steve mentioned, we could go in depth and talk for 20 minutes on any one of those topics. Like Steve mentioned, Ottawa County over the last 5-6 years has done a great job of doing these housing needs assessments to identify the specific needs. Allegan County just did their first one last year, and it's not much better there. Like Steve said, right now, and we'll get into where we're building, we're currently building on the south side of Holland, which is technically Allegan County. But on the opposite side, there are ripple effects of positive impact in our community when we provide stable housing. One of the benefits that Lakeshore Habitat we have is being part of an international organization, Habitat International. And the research and study and data that they're able to provide us is phenomenal. I actually, in the back, I printed out just a couple copies of what they call an evidence brief. And it's just why home ownership? What's the benefits of home ownership? They have 7 or 8 of those evidence briefs they've made over the last couple of years, focusing on different subcategories. So they have a whole evidence brief on what's the impact of home ownership on your health? What's the impact of home ownership on racial inequalities in your community? What's the impact of home ownership on financial stability? And it really goes deep into the data and the science and things like that. And then we're also able to talk to habitats around the country and hear their data, and we do some surveying ourselves. But some of the key things, and I might not touch on all these, is one, economic stability. So when we're talking about, both Steve and I, when we finish a home and a homeowner purchases that, we're guaranteeing that that home, their insurance, their taxes, their HOA is not going to be more than 30% of their income. So we're helping free them up. Most of our homeowners for Habitat, when they move into their home and they're signing the final contract, they're going, I'm saving $300, $400, $500 a month, and now I own something versus what I was paying for rent. So that $300, $400, $500 a month now is going towards, I've always wanted to fix my car. I've struggled when a kid gets sick, I question whether to take them to the doctor or not because I know there's going to be a cost associated with that. So it gives them that economic stability, and that starts to snowball and grow over time. Health outcomes, there's a lot of data around when you own a home, especially when you're moving into a new home. Childhood asthma, like that's one that pops to my mind, decreases by over 20-30%. Pretty basic. Educational benefits. We actually talked to our homeowners and we asked the parents. We didn't ask for report cards, but we just said, do you see a change in your kids' educational achievements once they've moved into a home? And across the board, like 95% of them were like, yes. And I talked to one homeowner specifically and said, it was the first time I saw my kid doing homework at home because they finally had a place where they could sit down and do their homework. Because often in our apartment, they were trying to do it at the kitchen table, and we had 4 kids, and we're 2 bedrooms, and it was noisy, it was loud, and they just couldn't focus. So little things. One of my favorite too is parents that said, it was the first time my kids invited a friend over to our house. So think about the social emotional benefits of that. Community strength. When people own their home, they're more likely to be involved in the community. We have a current Habitat homeowner that sits on Holland City Council. We have a son of a homeowner that sits on the Planning Commission. We had a homeowner that went and worked at Holland Rescue Mission for a period of time. I can tell you story after story of homeowners that once they moved into their home, they said, I've been blessed, how do I give back to my community? They're more engaged. Workforce retention as well. People that own a home are more likely to stay at their jobs long term or stay in that community long term. If you're renting, it's easier to say, you know what, hey, I see this opportunity in Grand Rapids, I'm going to move there for a little bit. You know, it helps keep people here. And then reduce public costs. When you look at the use of emergency services, government assistance, when you own your home, that all decreases because we're providing that stability. So the ripple effects, and we'll tell some more stories later, just go on and on. Kind of more specifically to Habitat, here's a couple pictures, but I want to share this. Improving affordable home ownership leads to numerous outcomes that extend beyond the house, such as greater economic stability, access to quality education, increased civic and social engagement, better health, and reduced environment. Related to educational, quality education, we had a homeowner just recently that had moved 6 times in 1 year. So think about the kids, and I know a lot of you deal with families as well that are in need. Think about the kids potentially moving 6 times, and now what if you have to move school districts? Or because now you live on the far north side, but you went to school on the south side, now you can't participate in extracurriculars. So all that is positive. The other thing too, it's common. It's a study that's been done for a long time talking about one of the easiest and best ways to gain wealth in our country is through home ownership. So the average net wealth is 400% higher for those that own their homes for those that don't. So it's the easiest way when you talk about like the American dream, owning your own home is a big part of that. Fewer emergency room visits and primary care. And then this is one of my favorite too. This comes right from a study we did here locally when we talked to our families. 89% of our families said they spend more quality time as a family once they moved into their home. And one example a homeowner shared with us is he said, hey, when we were renting, we were actually renting from a family, so we were kind of living in their basement. I was working full time, and then in the evening, I was fixing cars in the driveway just to make ends meet. And we moved into our home. Our mortgage payment was less than we were paying in rent. We had more stability. I no longer had to do those extra things, and we were able to have dinner as a family for the first time in years. Simple things like that. Think about the impact. How many of you grew up eating dinner with your family? Just the conversations and the social connectedness with your family. So that's a little bit about the ripple impact. Steve and I both now are going to share a little more about our individual ministries. So Lakeshore Habitat, a little bit about us for those that don't know. We're going into our 35th year here in Holland. Our mission is seeking to put God's love into action. Lakeshore Habitat, and this is the key here, brings people together to build homes, community, and hope. We could not do it on our own. Our mission and our vision and how we operate is by bringing the community together. 80% of our homes, roughly 80%, is built using volunteers, led by Ben, who's a member here. So founded in 1990. This is actually a picture from one of the very first homes that we did in Holland. It actually started out all volunteer based. Actually, Dave Genzink, who was a part of that back in the 1990s. Are you in that picture even? I don't know. You might be. But we, over the years, we now serve most of Ottawa County, so we go up to M45 to the north and then over to Hudsonville, and we actually go all the way down to Van Buren County. So we serve 3 counties, but about 90% of what we've done, maybe a little bit more over the years, has been in the greater Holland area, because that's where we've gotten a lot of support. We are currently working on some 3-year strategy to serve Allegan and Van Buren, because Holland, Greater Holland is a great community. There's a lot of resources here, but as we get into some of these smaller communities down the lakeshore, there's not as many resources, and they're calling us saying, we need you bad. There's need here, so we're trying to work on how we do that. Steve?
So a little bit about Jubilee Ministries. I'll let you read this, but Jubilee, one of the things that we're known for is we own the Midtown Center. Jubilee renovated that about 20 years ago. Right now, if we could figure out how to put a 4th floor on it, we would, because we're so busy there and our tenants want more space. We got great nonprofit organizations in there. And the goal of that building is that we wanted to create a space where nonprofits could have good quality office space to work out of, but not spend so much of their operations on rent. So our tenants have discounted rent so that they can spend more of their funding on mission. And it's worked out great. We see a lot of collaboration in there. We have a lot of educational and counseling organizations that work really well together. But we're bursting at the seams, and so we're trying to figure out how we use the old basement for office space and things like that, which is easier said than done. But anyway, if you can think of a way to put a 4th floor on the Midtown Center, let me know. The other thing we do is housing. Jubilee started out, we were renovating houses in the downtown neighborhoods. We had a partnership with HomeCore, where between the two of us, 2 organizations, we renovated 73 homes. Again, think back to 2008, 2009. There was a lot of empty homes, a lot of foreclosures happening. We were seeing a lot of speculative landlords from out of town coming in, buying those homes, and creating a real issue for the people that were renting from them. They weren't great landlords. And so we had some funders that helped us fund a pot of money that we took, and we kept reusing and reusing and reusing by buying these homes, fixing up and reselling them. About 5 years ago, we realized that math problem didn't work anymore. What we used to buy for $30,000 or $40,000 was all of a sudden $130,000, $140,000, and where the first 50 homes that we renovated, our final transaction price after the renovation was $153,000. All of a sudden it would have need to be like $280,000, $290,000, just because we don't halfway renovate a home. We're going to do it right and do it really well, and we just couldn't make that math problem work. So we did a couple things. One, we bought the big on the corner of 14th and Maple. It was an old apartment building that had been empty for years. We condoed that and said, okay, what would it look like if we did mixed income? So we purposely set it up as different income levels. And we're like, hey, this is kind of cool where you have different incomes living together. And then we also did Central Commons at 16th and Central, where the small homes there, did that jointly with HomeCore, where they did the houses just east of there. And it was like, we got a lot of pushback on that. But in the end, that was a really good project for the community, because it kind of showed that people are willing to live in a little smaller space if they can, and they own it, and they're paying every single one of the people that moved in there was a renter before, and their monthly housing bill was about half of what it was as a renter. So if we find the right space, we'll do something like that again. About 4 years ago, Jubilee and Habitat bought our first piece of property together. And again, we thought, hey, this mixed income thing is pretty neat. So Habitat works in a range from 30% of the area median income up to 80%. Jubilee starts at 80 and goes to 120. And so we create environments where people have different life experiences. If you think of our typical buyer, it's called the missing middle in some of the grants that we get, but it's teachers, it's nurses, it's first responders, it's people who really need to live in our community, but they can't afford it right now. And so that's the niche we're fitting in, trying to create housing. Dave mentioned we're building more than housing, just we're building communities. Really cool communities. You're going to see some pictures here. Can you tell we're proud of the work we do? So during calendar year 2025, we've gone, okay, so Jubilee was doing 1 or 2 houses a year renovating. We've grown a little bit. This year, we will have 25 houses under construction at the same time. So probably about August is when, oops, sorry, thank you. Probably around August, we'll hit that bogey. So pretty excited about that. And again, we could only do it because of the partnership and the support we get from the community. But, so what's our cost look like when we do it? Dave mentioned that they have great volunteer labor, and it's so fun for us to get to know some of the volunteers as we're working on the same job sites, getting to know Ben and him helping me figure things out that our builders are doing. So, but our total cost to build a home is about $280,000. It's getting a little. That number might be a little old because it's getting a little more expensive as materials costs have gone up. But with our buyer, a lot of our buyers, again, and this is an average, but a good average for us is they can afford about $240,000. So they're just under the 100% area median income. So we get $240,000 of our costs back by selling the home. But we need to subsidize by about $40,000 in order to make it work for this missing middle population to be able to have housing in the Holland area. So I'll start out with our first development together. And really this is, again, this is a great example of 1 + 1 = more than 2. By partnering, both our organizations have been able to grow in a way we wouldn't have been able to do individually. So this is Park Vista Place. It's just off of, it's on 40th Street. This is 40th Street right here. And to give you a placement, Maplewood Park is right across 40th Street. We were so lucky to get this parcel. It was great. We had a homeowner picnic when we were done. And we just went right across the street to the park. So 10 homes. It was completed in 2022. It was a 3.7 acre parcel. There you can see the tail end of a condo development that kind of circles around here. And then this started out as a 40 acre parcel. So we got 3.7, they got about 10, and then another developer got a whole bunch more. So. And our total development cost between the two organizations was about $2.7 million. And in the end, again, 5 homes. Our average cost was $299 there. Our average mortgage in the end was $225. So those buyers were, again, a little less than what we shoot for our average, but again, it's hitting a population where we want them to spend less than 30% of their income on housing. What we do for the gap, and this is, I get asked this question all the time, do you just give it away? Do you give that equity away? After 10 years, we do. So we do what we call a silent second mortgage. And so the gap between what the person is buying the house for and what it appraises for, we take that number and we give it to the buyer as equity. But they don't get to claim it for 10 years. And so that's how we protect the affordability on the home. So every year they live there, they get to claim 10%. So let's just say, because I'm not great at math, it's a $60,000 gap. That first year, they get to claim $6,000. We want our buyers to build wealth, but we don't want them to do it immediately on the backs of our donors. And so that's why we spend that out over 10 years. After 5 years, half of it is theirs. If they sell their home, they can sell it, but we get half that gifted equity back. Any appreciation in the house, if the value of the house goes up, they get 100% of that. So, the Habitat homes, you want to just cover that real quick? Dave?
Yeah, and Steve went into some detail that I failed to mention with Habitat. We have some similar models when it comes to the gifted equity, where it's a sliding scale over time, where we do that silent second mortgage as well. We're able to save cost on our homes because of the volunteer labor. So it's not, even when you look at the cost of our homes, it's not necessarily comparing apples to apples because we have some different programmatic costs that Jubilee does not. Our average, when we complete the home, so this is one of the differences between our models, where Steve's buyers are going to a bank, they're getting a traditional mortgage. Majority of all of our homeowners don't qualify for traditional mortgage. So we actually originate the mortgage ourselves. We have about 80 mortgages in our portfolio right now, but it's a zero income mortgage, and then they're paying us back over time. So at closing, we don't get anything at closing. So we're recapturing those dollars over potentially 30 years, and then very similar where they, the longer they're in their home, the more equity they'll get in that home. So, yeah. And so jumping forward, so off of the heels of Park Vista Place, we're like, you do the evaluation. Was this good? Yes. Did we help the community? Yes. Do we want to do it again? Yes. There's a lot more questions that go into it, but that's a basic conversation. So at that time, the city of Holland put up a request for proposal for about 4 acres on the south side of Holland, back behind the medical buildings at 36th and Washington. It was surplus property. The city said, we've owned this for a while, but we're not going to do anything with it, and we would love to see it develop into affordable housing. So Jubilee and Habitat went together jointly on a proposal for it. It actually was just this top half. The person who owned the bottom half also did a proposal, but in a Holland way, and after the meeting, they came to us in the parking lot and said, hey, I was just doing it to protect my property. I love what Habitat is doing and Jubilee are doing. If you guys get it, I will sell you my property at a discounted rate so you can do more. So that's how Vista Green was developed. So it's total of 42 units, 24 Jubilee, 18 Habitat homes. These are the Habitat homes up here, and then Jubilee's doing townhomes. Our focus was how do we make this very community-centric? So all of the front porches face inward. There's green space. We actually work with Outdoor Discovery Center, and we put in a playscape in there. There's going to be a gazebo. There's a sidewalk that goes around the entire thing. So phase 1, we actually have 6 homeowners already in. We're hopefully the next 3 homeowners will move in the next month or 2. And we're already working on phase 2. And Jubilee, you got 4 homeowners in?
Yep.
A 5th unit for sale still?
One 2-bedroom for sale.
For
if you know
sale.
what I mean.
And then they're starting, if anybody knows anybody, and then their next unit. So this was really kind of a dream of, okay, now that we did something, with 10 units, can we go bigger? And this is something where when I talk about we serve all the way down to Van Buren, we have townships coming to us saying, we have property, when can you start? It's like, well, it's not that easy. There's this thing called money that you need to do it. But we've learned a lot through it. One of the unique things that we've been able to do, and I won't go into all the details right now, is because we're doing larger parcels of property, it's allowed for different access to resources and funding that we're able to apply for at the state level, as well as work with the local city on as well. But here's some pictures. These are the Habitat homes. Back this summer. So one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted this to be a community that anybody could walk into and say, I want to live here. And this October, we were actually having a major donor event at the community. And this is when we know, all right, we were successful. We had one of our major donors, the wife said, if our kids were young still, I would want to live here. And that's what we want. We want anybody to go in there and say, I would want to live here. So that's just a little, anything else you want to say about Vista Green? Your townhome, sorry, I didn't mention yours. Those are over there.
No, it's, again, if you're out and about Washington, if you're heading south on Washington, turn right onto 36th Street, drive back there. It is really cool. It's really coming together really, really nicely. So we'll wrap that up sometime in the early 2026 is when we'll have 42 homeowners living in there. Our next project, the old Holland Hitch headquarters site. So on Ottawa Avenue, a developer that we worked with in the past bought the whole parcel, tore down the building, and he's building these high-end storage condos that are on this part of the property. I'm sorry, this part of the property. But he called me and he said, hey, I'm only going to develop half this property. Would you be interested? And sure enough, we were. And so that will start sometime this summer, where Jubilee will build 6 units, 6 townhome units, and Habitat will build 5. And it's going to be a nice little infill place. We love that, because where I talked about the development cost of taking a greenfield site, how expensive that is, this is significantly less expensive because you got sewer and water running right there. So it's going to be a good site for us. And that's, Ann mentioned, we got a grant from the county to do housing. That's the first use of that grant will happen on this site. We're also going for another grant from the state of Michigan that'll help us on that one too. So.
And I know we want to leave some time for questions.
Yeah.
We'll try and kind of get moving here a little bit. Just want to tell you, kind of when we talk about impact, here's some families. Just want to tell you some stories so you could kind of understand who some of the Habitat homeowners are as well. So this is actually Brittany. Great story. Brittany is a health worker for Ottawa County. She's a caseworker where she's going out in the community, meeting people and helping them understand what the resources are in the community. She had been referring people to Habitat for years. And then actually during 2020, as she's living in a small apartment with her 2 kids who are trying to do school from home, she's trying to work from home, she's pulling her hair out going, I need to do better for my family. So she looked into the requirements for Habitat and realized, wow, I'm in that area median income. I have that need. I qualify. So she applied and is now living in Park Vista. We also have been trying to do some unique and innovative things, both together and separately. So this family over here on your left, they moved into what's called Buttermilk Creek Townhomes in Hudsonville. We did a 5-unit townhome. It's the first time we've ever done that, and we have 5 families living there as well. Over here on the right, this young lady is in Haven Townhomes, which is on the north side, another innovative project where we identified that adults with various forms of disability are a population in the community that's underserved. They don't have an opportunity for home ownership. So we did Haven Townhomes. We have 5 individuals living there that have varying degrees of disability, but they own their own home. So lots of positive stories. This is a quote from a homeowner just recently is talking about, my mortgage is less than what my rent has been, enabling me to buy healthier foods for meals, get my son in better daycare, pay for everyday necessities without having to worry if I could pay the bills. So lots of impact there.
So what's next for us? Continued growth for both organizations. Like I said, Jubilee over this next year will finish or have 25 under construction. Everything in that group should be finished during 2026.
Yeah, we're working on finishing up Vista Green, working on finalizing the agreement for us to do the 20th Street project. We're also pursuing projects in Allegan, Van Buren. The other thing that we did just recently, we got grants from the Holland Zealand Community Foundation, the Allegan County Community Foundation, as well as some individual family foundations to hire a full-time home repair manager. We identified that critical home repair needs, people that own their home but they can't afford to fix it up. That's one of the easiest ways to address affordable housing. We received a $400,000 grant specifically to do critical home repair in the city of Allegan. And I'll mention this, but it's not final. There's no pen on paper. But just this week, we were preliminarily told that we're getting another $1 million, $500,000 to do critical home repair in the greater Holland area, $500,000 to do critical home repair in the greater South Haven area. So that's something that we want to focus on as well, because we have people call us all the time saying, I own my home, my roof is leaking, I can't afford to fix it. So we're able to assist those families.
So some of the challenge that we're working on, because all the building we're doing right now, primarily, you've done some other outside the city of Holland, but the city of Holland they work really well with us in terms of zoning and things like that and allow us to do what we need to do. Other municipalities aren't nearly that friendly. And so one of the, so we build for our homeowners, we want to build nice neighborhoods, but we're also building to show off to other municipalities so that they come into our developments and say, we want one of those there. And so it costs us $90 more per street lamp to do historic street lamps versus the kind of ugly overhang. So we do historic street lamps. We do play areas for our kids. We create green space for our buyers, and we use higher quality construction materials so that we can kind of fight off that affordable housing is an ugly thing or it's something we don't want in our community. It's starting to be effective as they visit. And then also, of course, funding. We're always looking for more money to do what we do. One last thing is expanding community partnerships. You know, we've got the two of us working together, but both of our organizations, you know, we find that we can create more housing and more opportunities for folks if we expand the circle. So we're open to do that. We've worked with Home Corps in the past. We're talking to Gateway Mission about a project that they might be a part of. So it's pretty cool to see other nonprofits being willing to work together.
Yeah, and then how can Hope Church help us make a difference and continue to help us make a difference? Just like Steve mentioned, you know, helping us spread awareness. So if you hear about something going on in your community, when we show up to planning commissions or things, it's usually the people that are against it that show up to talk. So if you see something that you agree with, show up and voice your concern. Reach out to your city council and share whatever municipality you live in. That gets rid of the not my backyard. You know, we had a ton of that when we started Vista Green, and I think now that we've been out there doing it, a lot of the neighbors are coming around going, wow, this is really cool. We like this. This is not what we expected it to be. And then continued support. Obviously, we need financial support to continue to do the work that we do. That helps us with the subsidies. We've been really blessed with some state grants, but it takes a balance of both things. For us, volunteer support is critical, whether that's coming out as a group or if you're at a place in life where you could spend a day or two and you want to hang out with Ben more, you can be a regular volunteer and he'll work with you, and our site supervisor will work with you and teach you, hey, here's what to do. Or if you have a special skill, like I love to paint, you know, let us know and we'll let you know when we have opportunities like that. So yeah, lots of information. What questions do you have? We could have gone 2 hours more. We kind of just scratched the surface, but yeah, what questions do you have?
Go ahead. I wondered what your backlog of interest is. How many people want to be homeowners, and is there a long list? And how do the homeowners get to you, and how do they qualify?
Yeah, great question. I'll answer that from Habitat because it's a unique thing. So it starts with an interest form. So if somebody comes to our office, calls us, maybe they're at a partner organization like Community Action House and they're talking about, I'd love to learn more. We have a simple interest form that takes less than 5 minutes, and it's really checking the box. Do you currently live in the community? Yes. Do you currently have income over the last year? Yes. Because we don't want someone like, hey, I live in Detroit, I want to come live in Holland. Right. Is your income between this level? Do you have a need? And a need can be defined as I'm paying more than 30% of my income in housing costs. I'm in an overcrowded situation. I'm in an unsafe situation. There's a variety of things. Am I willing to partner? Our homeowners, each adult in the house puts in about 250 what we call sweat equity hours. So they're actually volunteering to help build their home. They're volunteering to help build somebody else's home. We're putting them through a series of workshops and classes so that they gain the skills that they need and a variety of other things. On a yearly basis, we get 400 to 500 of those filled out. So that's the first step. Not everybody that fills it out qualifies. The next step is an orientation. So we have a homeowner services coach that reaches out to everybody that fills out an interest form and says, hey, yep, it looks like you qualify, let's meet. And that gets narrowed down to maybe 100 to 200 people do orientations. Once it gets to the next step, it's an actual application. So think about even a mortgage application. They have to bring in all their financial information. We do a home interview where we go to their home and we actually interview them there. And we have a selection committee that then approves them to move forward. And when they're going through the application process, we follow all the fair housing laws, so they're a number. So it might be 25-1 is the application number, and all we know is this is how many adults, this is how many kids, this is their income, and only the people that go and do the interview actually kind of meet the family and learn more about them. But yeah, we could easily be serving double the number of families based on the interest we're having. So.
I want to let everybody know that we are being recorded, and bear that in mind if you have comments or questions. Go ahead, David.
Oh, did you want to share about?
Yeah, so Jubilee's process is simpler, but kind of the same. We have a interest form, what we call the ticket to the dance is you got to pre-qualify for a mortgage. So we ask somebody to go into who they bank with and just get a pre-approval letter that they can qualify for a mortgage. And And then we have a intake form that asks the pertinent questions, making sure they're in the relevant income range. And then it's really first come, first serve. Following fair housing laws, there's some pretty tight guidelines that we need to follow, and we find the simplest thing is, if you get everything into us, you're next on the line, and it just goes like that. Mm-hmm. Currently, we have about 20 people on our list. We get 30 calls a week, but for whatever reason, not everybody's going to make it to the list, and that's constantly replenishing as we're finishing homes.
In our Hope Church connections with Dwelling Place and our project, I'm thinking about the Ottawa Center, and how close is that to how close is the Dwelling Place?
It's got to be half a mile, yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you mentioned your collaboration with other nonprofits and other entities. What is your connection with Dwelling Place or not?
So from Jubilee's standpoint, we were a co-developer on Midtown Village when they did that, and I regularly talk to. They've had some staff changeover, but Jen Schaub, who does a lot of their outreach work, her and I talk regularly because we co-developed that park at Midtown, on the Midtown block, that type of thing. But yeah, from recently with housing, not a lot. Their target is a little different than ours, but great organization. Yeah.
Yeah, we currently don't have, I'm only in the role for 3 months now, so my predecessor I know had met with them previously, but there wasn't any natural connections yet for us. But we tend to stay in conversation with a lot of those in West Michigan as a whole, whether it's like ICCF or Dwelling Place, just to kind of pick each other's brains and things like that as well. And no relationship right now.
Do we know currently how many homes that are bought in Holland are bought by persons who are going to rent versus live in the home?
I don't. Maybe
The city does. The city does.
Yeah.
We used to stay closer to that number, and it was creeping up to over 40%. It's come back down pretty significantly since that high point. And there were some blocks that were over 70%. Some of those are still too high. And when I say too high, once you get over half the houses on your block being rentals, that's not great for the neighborhood. But I think that's creeping down too, but I haven't been too close to that number recently. We know somebody asked a question offline about community land trusts, and so, Jane, do you want to ask the question, and we can answer that?
Can I have the mic first? Thanks, Jane. Yes, Terry DeYoung has asked a question, and I can share that. I'm intrigued by the idea of creating a community land trust in the Holland Zeeland area as a way to address long-term affordability of homes. I assume you are familiar with CLTs. Grand Haven has one, and Dwelling Place has created one in Grand Rapids. I've had preliminary conversations with a few leaders in Holland, including Community Action House, the Disability Network Lakeshore, and your two organizations, about creating one, but it's complicated by several factors. What would it take for Habitat and Jubilee to engage in conversations together with other community partners to establish a CLT in the Holland Zeeland area?
So let me first tell you what a CLT is, so in case you're not sure what that is. It's basically a development where a third party that's set up by the developer, it's usually a nonprofit third party, owns the land that the houses are built on. And then there's an agreement, if you buy this house in a CLT at a discounted rate because of trying to create affordability, that your growth in the appreciated value of the house is constrained a little bit by not owning the land. So, for example, I know one CLT that after you sell the house, and it doesn't really matter a time frame, they really don't have a time frame consideration on it, but you get to keep like 30% of the profit and 70% goes back to the CLT, and then they take the house back and fix it up or do whatever needs to be done, and then resell it to somebody in the same income range that you are. So it maintains a longer-term affordability on the home. So it's something that we've looked at. We'll speak for our own individual organizations here. And it's not something we've said no to, but they're really complicated. They are so complicated. And I talked to Denny Sturdivant that used to run Dwelling Place, and he gave me the number of you need to have 45 homes in the CLT in order to be able to pay your bills associated with creating the CLT. So, it gets really expensive. The other thing is, we think we have a good method of maintaining affordability with our silent second mortgage, where it allows our homeowners to build wealth. And that's really important to us. I'm a little concerned about how quickly or how little a homeowner can build wealth when they're constrained by the parameters of CLT. And I'll give you one anecdotal thing that opened my eyes that I had never thought about. I was speaking with an African-American woman, and she was asking me about if we were interested in CLTs, and I said, right now, it's not something we're pursuing. She said, I'm thankful for that. She said, I've always, between redlining and things like that, people have always kept my people out of a neighborhood, and when I own something, I really want to own it. And with a CLT, I wouldn't feel like I really owned it. And so that's a perspective that I didn't have, that it really opened my eyes to somebody else's thinking on something like that. So,
and I would say similar for Habitat. We're not going to say no to something. We're going to explore the options if it comes to that point. But for the history of Habitat, we've really focused on serving marginalized communities. And often those marginalized communities are ones that have been held back from owning and prospering. And so one story that comes to mind for us is, we had a homeowner that, got their home, their kids were young, they lived in it 20, 30 years, they paid off their mortgage, they were able to sell their home, move into a condo, and then with the wealth they incurred, they were able to help their kids buy a home, right? So now you have generational change, where if we were in a situation like this, they might not have been able to do that. So there's a community benefit from the community land trusts that might hinder the individual benefit, and we've tend to lead towards the individual benefit at Habitat thus far. Yeah.
They're not bad because they're the only answer for some communities. Yeah. So we don't want to paint them in a bad way, but for us right now, it doesn't seem to fit.
Yeah.
Have you had any concern lately about the increase in short-term rentals occupying more of the kinds of houses that might have otherwise been available?
Yeah. For us, because we're primarily working in the city of Holland, and they got out in front of that before it got too bad, unlike some of the townships, we're really not seeing it too much. But I think we're going to see, and this is good, that where some of the local municipalities are changing the rules there and creating more rules, there may be some houses that used to be rentals will be for sale. And what we're seeing right now is buyers coming in, and hopefully, local buyers or buyers with family. There is a lot of out-of-town money coming in right now and buying homes. But we haven't seen a huge effect.
In terms of revenue production, what about both of your organizations? Do you have an endowment? Because my experience in fundraising is that more people can make a larger gift through a planned gift, through to a not-for-profit. And there seems to be like many of the emergency situations both organizations face might be beneficial handled by having a general endowment or even a specific endowment.
Yeah, we have an endowment through the Holland Zealand Community Foundation, and having been in fundraising for a number of years, endowments are great, but you got to start them, and you got to have a lot of capital to start them. So ours is very, very small and is not having much of an impact. We do get estate gifts. Almost every year we get estate gifts, and those go right into funding building homes. But to really have an endowment that's going to make a difference, you're talking millions of dollars. And that's not bad. If somebody came to me today and said, hey, I have $5 million, I'm willing to start an endowment, I'm going to say, absolutely, that would be great. But that's not happening, And so do I take the next year and raise $2 million to put in an endowment and we stop building until we get there? Or do we try to, we're also, the other thing I would say is we're trying to be innovative and creative as well. And so actually related to Dave Gensink here, we're doing a pilot project right now on 16th Street between Columbia and Lincoln, right, those streets, right? Right by the train tracks there. It's a prefabricated home. So that actually was a family that qualified for our program, but they were a family of 9, and so they were a little big for Vista Green, and we said, okay, we own this parcel of land we bought years ago from the city, what can we do there? A lot of habitats around the state are using prefabricated homes, basically because they don't have enough volunteer labor to keep up. So we said, let's try that there. And then the other innovative thing we're doing there is there are a number of banks that have now developed mortgage products specifically for habitat, recognizing that we work with the homeowners, so there's some more credibility there. And so actually Wintrust Bank that bought Macatawa Bank, they've been working with habitats for years. And so we're actually trying a traditional mortgage there, which would allow us to move kind of into what Steve does. So at closing, we recapture dollars and we can move right ahead. The $500,000 that Lakeshore Habitat got from Ottawa County, we're hoping that's going to be our own revolving capital. And I would love to build that, kind of a similar model. If I get that to $1 million, we can start our next project, and then we do a little bit of fundraising for the subsidy, and then when we get the loan, the mortgage payment at closing, we put that money right back into that revolving fund, and we keep moving forward. So we're trying to do some of that, but yeah. But again, if
Try a challenge grant.
Challenge grant, yeah.
500,000.
Yeah. And we've done that before. When we had our capital campaign, we had someone have a challenge opportunity for us. But yeah, again, if anybody has $5 million they want to throw into endowment, we will accept it. No problem. But yeah, it's a great idea.
So thank you both for a great presentation and crisp, informative answers. I'm wondering if either of you, engage in any conversation with the City of Holland or the Chamber of Commerce about the structural issues that drive the availability of housing. I think, for example, the City of Holland wants affordable housing, but it also gives tax incentives to draw in businesses that hire more people and then create more pressure on the housing stock. Whereas if there was a recession, if factories closed and there was a high unemployment here and people moved out, there wouldn't be a problem with affordable housing. So it's not just how much we build, it's how many people are seeking that housing. And so what is an ideal community going to look like, and to what extent should we be incentivizing growth that puts pressure on housing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Early in the presentation, we talked about, it's a supply and demand issue right here in town right now. Now, I will say, in terms of tax incentives, that the city has worked with us really well, and you always hear of businesses getting brownfield TIFs. We got brownfield TIFs for the work we're doing, which is, we were the first organizations in the state to do that, and it really, about a year ago, the state kind of made official the program that we're doing that allows municipalities to do that. So in our projects, just to really simplify it, you take the base tax receipts of the empty land that we start developing. Once we develop it, it's going to be worth that much in tax receipts from the city. We get that difference for, on our first project, 10 years, and the second project, 28 years, and it pays us back for the cost to put in infrastructure. So it's pretty innovative, and we're thankful for the city to do it. We're hoping that we can get other municipalities to do it. But yeah, you're right, Dr. Myers, as we grow our population, housing is not keeping up. and it's a big issue, yeah.
We're going to let Rob have a comment, and then I'm going to close.
I'm going to apologize and steal your presentation here. So you probably could be forgiven if you think we've fallen asleep at the disability housing project. We have been intentionally quiet because we've been bit too many times by when we thought things were going to happen and they didn't happen. So I'm going to give you a little update. We're closer than you think. I may regret that statement. There's 2 tracks that are going parallel to each other right now in our project. Because of the time it's taken, we are renegotiating our agreement to purchase, because it's expiring at the end of this month. Andy Mulder is doing a great job on that, and we're working through the weeds on that, and I'm confident that that will be finished. The other track is that the cost of the playground moving went up significantly. And at the same time, Dwelling Place had a changeover in staff. So we've been communicating with them. And I feel this week we've had a lot of traction. We had Dwelling Place out here and our contractor for the playground, and they've agreed on a whole bunch of stuff. And so I'm fairly confident that soon you're going to see the playground start to materialize with some groundwork. We also have to, what is that thing, Ben? The exchange, the air exchange thing over here, you don't even notice it by the door. That's got to shrink, and that project is going to get started, yes, I hope, soon. It's kind of a going together. We only do this when it's freezing cold out and there's snow and we're trying to walk feet, and all of that. I met yesterday morning with a contractor who I think Dwelling Place is going to hire to take out all the trees in the playground area first. And then I'm pleased to say that as a final aside, that the Dwelling Place wants to save as many trees over here, those big, beautiful trees that I cry every time I think we're going to cut them down. They're going to try and save what they can, so that's good news as well. So right now, it is possible that somewhere at the end of March, we might start to see some construction actually on the building. Fingers crossed.
Thank you. And I want to thank Jubilee and Habitat. Thank you for coming. Steve and Dave, really appreciate the information. Yes, that was very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to quickly say that next week, Dr. David Stubbs from Western Seminary is going to be here to talk about the Hope College and Western Seminary prison education program. But you need to come to the chapel. Please remember that next week. We will try to put reminders in the church emails because this room will be set up for the congregational meeting. So people who are coming on Saturday, some of you may have volunteered for that already, but on Saturday they're going to set up tables and everything in this room, and therefore we will need to meet in the chapel. We will still have live streaming and recording and captioning all taking place. David and Ken have promised, our wonderful tech team, that will all still be taking place next week. We'll just be in the chapel. So thank you. Thank you all very much.